Once again, North Korea has defied international demands to give up its nuclear and missile programs. They're illegal as far as the United Nations is concerned. They're a right as far as North Korea is concerned. And the communist country said on Sunday that it had successfully tested out a hydrogen bomb, an extremely dangerous nuclear weapon. It was apparently tested underground, causing an earthquake of magnitude 6.3, a strong tremor. And North Korea looks like it's getting ready to launch more test missiles, according to South Korea. That country has strengthened an American-made missile defense system. It says the U.S. is going to increase its military presence in the region. This would be the 6th time that North Korea has tested out a nuclear weapon, but it appears to be the first time it's tested one this powerful.
Hydrogen bombs have never been used before in warfare. Atomic bombs have. This is what the US dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima back in 1945, ultimately killing more than 200,000 people. But the H-bomb is at least hundreds of times more powerful than the A-bomb. The H-bomb has a far larger yield than traditional weapons, meaning that devices can be smaller while causing greater devastation. Atomic bombs use a process called fission to split plutonium or uranium into smaller atoms in a chain reaction, releasing massive amounts of energy. Hydrogen bombs use fusion. Instead of splitting the atoms, it combines small atoms like hydrogen. Essentially, it's two bombs in one. North Korea first claimed back in January 2016 it had successfully tested a hydrogen bomb. If it does in fact have this capability today, it has joined a very select club. Only the US, Russia, the UK, France and China have carried out confirmed tests of hydrogen bombs.
In an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley said, quote, "Enough is enough."
We have taken an incremental approach, and despite the best of intentions, it has not worked.
The U.S. wants the United Nations to level the strongest sanctions possible against North Korea. This might include stopping oil shipments to the country. The U.S. thinks that would hurt North Korea's economy so much that the nation would be pressured to discuss with other countries a peaceful way forward. North Korea gets most of its oil from China, a North Korean ally, so we don't know yet if the sanctions will actually get passed. But because the United Nations says North Korea has evolved from being a regional troublemaker to a global threat, countries around the world are watching what happens here.
It's not necessarily things that we haven't heard before, but the difference is that North Korea has been following through on the threats that it has been making because they have been talking about they put out a photo of their leader, Kim Jong-un, standing in front of a miniaturized nuclear warhead, and then hours later they tested a nuclear device. They launched an intermediate-range missile, and they said that the future launches would be targeting the Pacific Ocean and aimed to contain the U.S. territory of Guam. And now you have South Korea saying that they believe we could just be days away from another North Korean ballistic missile launch, possibly fired toward the Pacific, possibly toward Guam. And so North Korea continues to make these threats that they are delivering on. Now, again, what we've seen from North Korea continue to be tests that don't cross the red line of actually an attack, something that the U.S. would be forced to respond to. And I think that that needs to be pointed out, that North Korea has had very dangerous weapons capabilities for a long time. And what they have done is they have tried to demonstrate their abilities as a deterrent against military action by the United States. So I don't get any indication from my trip just last week to Pyongyang, arrived back on Saturday, that North Korea wants to start a war with the United States. I think it's the opposite, but the fear is that this is so much provocation in the region, and one misstep could cause this region to stumble into a war, because that's how wars often begin. It's not an intentional act, but it's you stumble into a war, like World War I. That's the fear out here right now.
In some parts of Texas, the floodwaters have started receding. Houston's mayor says 95% of the city is now dry. In other areas, the flooding and the dangers it brings will stick around for days. It's been a week and a half since Hurricane Harvey hit southeast Texas, and the state's governor says it'll take years to recover. On Wednesday, the U.S. House of Representatives is expected to vote on a bill that sends billions of dollars of help to the region. The overall cost of the storm, which could exceed $100 billion, would be the greatest in U.S. history. Meantime, trouble in the Atlantic. Hurricane Irma is spinning toward the Caribbean, and the Category 4 storm was expected to get stronger. It's not clear yet where Irma will go or whether it'll threaten the continental U.S., but large waves have begun crashing on the shores of the Leeward Islands on Monday. It's been said Rome wasn't built in a day, but it's also been said there's a city named Rome on every continent. Is it true? Depends on your definition of Rome and continent. First off, you can't go off R-O-M-E. A variation on this is Roma with an A, and there is either a Rome or a Roma on every continent except Antarctica. There are no cities on Antarctica. So, if you're willing to accept R-O-M-A and you're willing to forget about Antarctica, well then Roma no further for the answer. Now that's random. A U.S. Marine who'd served in the Iraq War struggled for years after he got back home in 2005. He was suffering from a traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. But he says he started to heal after he bought a surfboard at a yard sale and put it to use. And the organization he founded for others like him has helped 300 people in the last 2 years.
I enlisted in 2003, a few weeks before our invasion of Iraq. We learned really quick that we could take casualties. People got blown up, people got shot. But no matter what happened the day before, you had to wake up the next day and do your job. 2 weeks before I got home, we were engaged with the enemy. And then just to go home and have to turn that off, I came home, felt like I had no control over myself. And I was afraid of myself. I really didn't have any urge to be around any veteran. I pushed myself so far away from it. And then I started surfing. We're gonna talk about some technical stuff and teaching how to surf. We're gonna arch our back, extend our arms out. You wanna try to be center on your board. I started meeting veterans in the water. Let's do it. It's an amazing feeling when you can look at another individual out in the water that you don't know tons about, but you know that person's been through some stuff. There's something about the ocean, you just feel cleansed. Out there it's different because we're also focusing on the present and the future.
In my mind, I wanted to come back to what I was, and that never could happen. You come to Warrior Surf, and it gets all the bad stuff, the nightmares, and it just pushes them away. All that you're focused on is just being lifted up on that wave. It's like finding peace. Part of the thing that was so devastating to me was the lack of the brotherhood. And so by being with Warrior Surf, I needed my tribe, and I found it again. I'm trying to learn how to redefine and be okay with looking back.
How are they doing? Somewhere along the lines, some of us started quitting. This place doesn't breed quitters. 3, no. Stand up, Allie. You take that energy of everyone else around you, it's not going to end when you get out of the water. You're going to keep on going. I'm full of joy when I know that their heart's a little bit lighter and they actually can enjoy this beautiful life.
Here's how to pull a perfect 10 out of 10. For a Guinness World Record, it wasn't just a question of how many pull-ups a guy could do, it was a question of how many he could do in a minute. The first 38 or so seemed to come pretty easily, but then the clock started to wind down and the real work began. It was the last 13 that made the difference. The previous record was 50 pull-ups in a minute. Adam Sandell's total for the new world title, 51. Which sets a new high bar. Of course, to break that record, you'd have to have a pretty hard core. You'd have to stick your chin out. You'd have to be armed and dangerous. But once you got your trap set and had the right latitude, all that's left to do is to put your back into it. I'm Carl Azuz, and that's CNN 10.